All right, can everybody hear me? All right, good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Cyberport for inviting me and all the fantastic leaders sitting in the front rows here. And I want to also thank Cindy Tsao of the Alibaba Entrepreneurs Foundation for nominating me to speak this morning. This is a great honor, and I am absolutely delighted to be part of such a star-studded lineup of speakers. I also feel a very big obligation because this week is a huge week for Hong Kong, right? We've kind of been reopening. We've got a lot of events, FinTech Week, right? There's a big government summit, and we've got the Rugby Sevens. Let's not forget about that. I also want to now make sure my presentation works here, so hold on. Okay, great. So I also definitely want to congratulate the Cyberport Investors Network for your 50th birthday. Gobi is also celebrating a birthday. We're celebrating our 20th birthday. And so we are also piggybacking our event. In fact, it's going to be on October 31st. We are organizing that with our partner. It's going to be powered by Hang Seng Bank, our very close strategic partner, so thank you. And I also want to say, Gobi today, who are we? And why am I up here speaking, and why should you listen to me? That's a good point. Well, because Gobi, celebrating our 20th anniversary, we're in 15 locations. So we have kind of a little bit of a more regional perspective. We have 1.5 billion assets under management, and we invested in 320 companies. We also relocated our headquarters from Shanghai to Hong Kong in 2019. And we are I think the only VC that's dual headquartered in Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur. And so I think all of you are thinking, why would Gobi do that? And so maybe after this presentation, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding. So, at Gobi, like many of you venture capitalists in the room, we always tell our entrepreneurs to take risks. So today, I am also going to take a risk with a different type of presentation, and I figured, what's the worst thing that could happen? Cyberport won't invite me back next year. But if you like it, maybe they will, right? First of all, my legal counsel has advised me that all these viewpoints being represented are my own personal views and do not represent those of Gobi. Okay, so let's start, shall we? Let's start. I'm going to use movie guides to walk us through what's going on today. And my first movie is, I love Gu Tianle, right? 明日战记, right? Has anybody seen this movie? Okay, it's called Warriors of the Future or Tomorrow's War. And I got to say, like many of you in the room, that, this is probably one of the most challenging markets we've seen in the last 2 decades, right? And so how are we going to navigate through these market conditions and still focus on growth, which is the topic of today's conference? And I don't want to over-dramatize it, but the stakes are high because the choices we make today could determine our future. Do I have your attention now? Yes, okay. All right, so let's go. First movie. So they say movies capture the current zeitgeist. I just wanted to throw that word out because it's a cool word, right? The zeitgeist of society, right? And I don't think there's no movie title that captures what we're all feeling than this one, right? Michelle Yeoh's movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. What's been going on? Floods in Pakistan, hurricanes in Florida, unrestrained inflation, markets crashing, crypto collapsing. Stock markets are so bad, 10 cent is now 5 cent. The passing of Queen Elizabeth, too, right? New prime minister in the UK, midterms in the US, war in the Ukraine that could become a nuclear showdown. And now monkeypox. Just when I thought I could take off my mask, now we have something in the US called RSV. What is going on? Good question. And to make it even more severe, we also have the 3 C's. What's been on everyone's mind? And I've been given sort of the task to address the 800-pound panda in the room. The 3 C's, right? COVID, Congress and the Cold War. Now, a lot of people probably think this is a big challenge for Hong Kong, but I would actually group it all together, and I would say this is a vitamin C for Hong Kong. And what do I mean by that? First of all, on COVID, there's been many conspiracy theories, so I don't want to add to any more today, but let me just say one thing. Another perspective is I have a mother-in-law in Shanghai, and many of her friends, they don't want to take the vaccine. Okay, if you believe that. And I think that's true. So you got maybe a lot of people, older people in China that don't want to take the vaccine. So I'm just going to offer a different perspective because I was also just in the US. You know, the Chinese government has locked down their cities essentially to protect hundreds of millions of elderly people. In a weird way, you think about it, they're putting the lives of their citizens first, almost at the expense of their economy. They're willing to sacrifice their economy to protect the most vulnerable segments of the population. And I was just in the US, and you know, you've got people who want to take away women's rights, right, for their bodies, right, the anti-abortion people, and you know, they want unlimited access to guns. So my question is, when the world talks about human rights and protection of a value of life, which government actually protects human life or values human rights more? Okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there, one perspective. The second perspective is, when we look at the Congress, I mean, for the longest time, we've been waiting, right, for October 16th. And it seemed like the whole Chinese government had slowed down, right? What's the old saying? 少做少错,不做不错. It's like everybody was waiting. And now the Congress is over, right? I think there's been a consolidation. Things have become clearer. And I would actually say that this is an opportunity. Why? Because it's very clear that US and China are in a competition. Do we all agree on that? I mean, this is a strategic competition, it's been said. And so I think the central government, if they're going to compete, they need to focus on three things: technology, talent, and funding. And I think the prior speakers have all talked about that. From a technology standpoint, I totally agree with what Dr. Li Kai-fu had said earlier. AI is going to be critical. But let me just summarize from my viewpoint what I think. I mean, in the last 20 years, venture capitalists, many of them in this room, what have we been doing? We've been funding companies that make things, allow people to buy things cheaper, and we've been funding startups that make things cheaper. The next 20 years, and I think it's very clear what the central government wants to do is, they want venture capitalists and society to fund startups so people can buy things better and make things better, not just cheaper. What do I mean by that? When we buy things, we have to focus on the circular economy, right? ESG. We can't be buying things and wasting things like before. And I think companies that are making things, you have to take into carbon concerns, decarbonization, ESG, materials, AI, robotics, etc. I think that's very clear where China wants to go. So I think that's the first thing on technology. There's going to be a shift from consumer startups that burn a lot of money to get market share. Right? I think we can all agree on that. On talent, if there is this strategic competition, China's going to need talent. Hong Kong could be a magnet for that, and there's going to be a global arms race for talent. And the third thing is funding. If China and America are going to compete, you got to be able to pay for it, right? So the economy still has to be strong. So I would leave everyone with these some observations, and I think this is actually good. China cannot neglect its economic growth and will focus on that after the Congress. Now, the Cold War. I was just in the US, and although it's a little depressing, because the only thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree on is hardening their attitudes towards China, I did come away with some hope. Because the second thing that everybody can agree on is inflation is really bad. And I just had the idea that if I'm the United States, I could reduce inflation immediately by doing one thing: reducing the tariffs, right, that they've imposed on China. So I think if the United States wants to deal with inflation, you still got to work with China because China has a lot of excess capacity and they could turn it on and inflation would come down immediately. Okay? So those are my 3 C's. And now let's keep going on. So U.S.-China, what does it really mean? Here's my analogy. The U.S.-China strategic competition is Game of Thrones. How many have seen that, right? You guys get it. Look, it's the Lannisters versus the Targaryens. The real threats are the White Walkers. Who knew that George Martin was a prophet of the future, right? This is exactly what's going on. We need more Jon Snows, right, who focus on the real problem, which are the White Walkers. The White Walkers represent climate change, environmental threats, pollution, destruction of the oceans. And Hong Kong has a huge role to play for that. There are many Jon Snows in Hong Kong today who are going to be able to bridge the Lannisters and the Targaryens so we can focus on the real threats, okay? But over the last couple of years, maybe, I feel like there's some people in Hong Kong who maybe have a crisis of confidence. Maybe they feel like they've lost their mojo, okay? And I just want to say that Hong Kong has not lost its mojo. Look at where we've come. We've been talking about this. A couple of years ago, when Gobi first started together with Alibaba Entrepreneurs Fund, this is the ecosystem. $4.4 billion, I want to focus, that was invested in Hong Kong startups, 0 unicorns. Where are we today? Almost a 9x increase of venture funding, 18 startup unicorns today. That's pretty good. What's next? Hong Kong is going to be integral to China's plans, right? I believe that Hong Kong's importance to China doesn't go down, it only goes up, right? People have always said, oh, the Chinese government is trying to make Hong Kong more like China. No. I think Hong Kong can become the entire incubator or accelerator for all of China. It can become a sandbox for what China wants to do. Hong Kong can do the things that China may not be able to do right now. And that's the opportunity. Imagine Hong Kong as an incubator, the entire Hong Kong as an incubator for China. How awesome would that be, right? Hong Kong can experiment. Maybe it can fail. Nothing wrong with that. Experiment again, rinse, wash, repeat until we find the best answers. And that's the opportunity. What's next? GBA, for all of our friends listening abroad. You may wonder, well, what else does Hong Kong have going for it? Hong Kong is going to be part of GBA. I just want to leave you with one word. Megalopolis. And I'm going to come back to that, okay? But Hong Kong and GBA, what are we talking about? The GBA, the Greater Bay Area, was something that visionaries like Dong Jianhua and Victor Fung have been talking about for years. It's finally happening. We're talking about a population of 87 million people, bigger than Germany, with a GDP of $2 trillion, bigger than South Korea. And Hong Kong is going to be a key driver of that. You know, we should feel really honored and lucky that we're alive at this moment in time, because the government of China is trying to create the world's first megalopolis. Look that word up. It's a real word. I didn't make it up. It is a super city. And that's what we're part of. Everybody in Hong Kong, we're part of this huge experiment to be the world's first megalopolis. How exciting is that? And then the Greater Bay, it's going to be the next startup hub. A couple of years ago, there were only 6 unicorns from the Greater Bay Area. This is excluding Hong Kong. Today, 63. It is the fastest growing startup ecosystem in China, and I would argue that Greater Bay is phase 3 of China's tech development. Phase 1 was Beijing. Phase 2, Shanghai. Phase 3, GBA. If you don't believe me, read it in the 5-year plan. A lot of my friends from overseas say, you know, what does the Chinese government so opaque, not transparent? Not true. Everything they say they're going to do, they write it in the 5-year plan. Just go read it. Next. And so Gobi, we've been doubling down on Hong Kong. A couple of years ago, when we first started, we started with 5 people. Today, we're over 20 people. We just opened up offices in Shenzhen and Guangzhou, and we've tripled our office space in the Hopewell Center because we believe that the future is right here. And why do we believe that? It's because, hey, Hong Kong doesn't have to go looking for its mojo. We never lost it, okay? Look how far Hong Kong has come. Hong Kong's only going to become more important. The GBA is a huge opportunity. And I think what's holding us back is we don't have a catchy term. So I'm going to propose one. Feel free to use this. I think all the technologies coming out of Hong Kong GBA, we need to come up with a catchy term. I always thought Canto Pop was great. So let's call it Canto Tech. Okay? And here's what's even more exciting. In Hong Kong, we can connect to the crazy rich Southeast Asians. Okay? In the past, there was a famous saying, go west, young man. And now, I would say, go south, young one. We have to be more gender balanced now. ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's huge. It's growing quickly, and it's young. And Hong Kong has deep linkages with Southeast Asia. I think in the past, everybody in Hong Kong, we've always looked to the West. Canada, UK, US, Australia. Great markets, don't get me wrong. But let's not forget Southeast Asia. Why? Look how big this place is. As a country, Southeast Asia, 700 million people, 3rd largest in the world. It has a GDP that's bigger than India. Okay? What else? Look at this. By the year 2050, 5 of the world's biggest economies will be in Southeast Asia. Indonesia, and that's why all this money is going to Indonesia, is going to be the 4th largest GDP country in the world. Okay? And let me tell you something. I got to come up with a name. Hong Kong is perfectly positioned to be a super connector. I know we have former leaders who said that. I always thought that was a great word. Hong Kong can connect Northeast Asia to Southeast Asia. And at Gobi, we've given this strategy a name. It's called Crouching Panda, Hidden Tapir. Okay? Again, you guys will notice, this is my 3rd Michelle Yeoh movie. Did you guys notice that? Yes, I really like Michelle Yeoh, yes. Finally, hey, what are the key takeaways? 1, yeah, China, we had COVID. It's become like another Tiananmen moment when everybody was down on China. And I would say, don't be down on China. You disengage with China at your own risk. Those who maintain the relationships, like in 1989, are going to be beneficiaries. 2, winter is coming. Yeah, I mean literally and figuratively, right? The US-China Cold War is only going to get worse, but I actually think that creates opportunities for Hong Kong. Yeah, baby, it's groovy. Austin Powers. Hey, Hong Kong, we got a lot going for it, for us, right? We don't have to look for our lost mojo, okay? We always had it. 2, rise of Canto Tech. Don't forget, east and west is great, but don't forget north to south. Crouching Panda, Hidden Tapir. And on that note, I would say Hong Kong companies also need to diversify. You know, get more people from Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines on your team, because you can then connect out to those ecosystems. Finally, I would just want to end with this. You know, and I wrote this down, so I want to read this very carefully. I end with a challenge to everybody here today. You know, Warriors of the Future, great movie. But I want to end with a challenge. Instead of warriors mindlessly fighting tomorrow's wars and repeating the mistakes of the past, I think we need to become warriors fighting for a higher purpose, a greater good. So I think in order to protect the next generation, we got to change our mindset. We can't just be warriors of the future, but we must become warriors for the future. Thank you very much.